Chennedy Carter is assuming the role of closer for the Chicago Sky, and I don't see a player based off of their current roster, based off of how defenses react to certain players when they have the ball in their hands, and based off of how that player puts other players in positions to be successful. No one else checks off those boxes as thoroughly and as consistently in a sustained manner as Chennedy has this season. And I think it helps to solve a big part of the process that the Chicago Sky have not necessarily been consistent with. They're 4-9 in games that have entered the clutch this season, and that's the second most games, but that's the second lowest in terms of win percentage in those scenarios at 30.8%. Again, they're 4-9 in their 13 games in the clutch. A lot of the issues in terms of inconsistencies that they've seen and just the general desire for more from them have come from them just really trying to find their way, establishing an identity in terms of style of play, the type of advantages they want to create, et cetera, et cetera. And I think Chennedy helps to solve all of those boxes that I mentioned earlier, as well as the ones that I just recently mentioned. And it's the space that she's operating in more than anything that really helps for her to just be this primary fire starter. And ultimately, like I said, be the best piece to be the primary closer for the Chicago Sky team. In the games since she's been starting on June 16th, the 6 games since then, she's top 10 in fast break points, actually leading the WNBA in fast break points at 4.2. She's also top 10 in points in the paint, ranking 4th at 12 points per game in the fourth quarter, points in the paint per game in the fourth quarter, which is on par with Angel Reese as well as Brittany Griner and Leah Boston. I'll just make note of that. There's a guard that's scoring as efficiently and as often as primary post players are in the paint. That speaks to just the downhill prowess that she has. And then the other big thing for me with Chennedy is just the general scoring from her. 20.2 points per game as a starter in these 6 games, and that ranks tied for 7th or tied for 8th in the W since she's been a starter. Those things really speak volumes to why she's just the perfect piece to be the primary closer for this team, to properly position everybody else, including herself, for success. And I want to dive into the film on their closing efforts against the Atlanta Dream, because I truly feel like this is going to be a timestamp for the team going forward. All right, first play we're going to be looking at here, Chennedy initiating offense, and we're going to be paying attention to her just from the helm, directing traffic. And I think the biggest thing with the Chicago Sky in terms of how they're looking to operate on offense, finding pockets to where they can manipulate space for the advantages that they're trying to create to be optimized. We see just that here with Chennedy Carter. She's able to get downhill, or before getting downhill, she's going to be directing traffic. And you see her directing traffic, telling Diamond DeShields to clear that strong side corner. Clearing that strong side corner is going to allow for her to play in more space. Usually it's going to allow for the roller to play in more space, or it's going to allow for an advantage on the back end if they commit one of those defenders from the backside over the help line to take away the advantage that's happening in primary action on the strong side and on ball. So we see all of these things kind of play in dynamic here. We see Diamond respace as she runs the baseline from strong side corner to weak side corner. And as we see Chennedy get into pick and roll with Angel Reese, I want to pause it here and say that just the little things with them, this has been a prolific 2-player action tandem between Angel Reese and Chennedy Carter. They can clean up some of the little things, they can grow that much more prolific. And for Chennedy, it's the setup for the screen. If you take Alicia Gray, one of the best perimeter defenders in the W, even one step deeper underneath the screen, by the time she gets into the between the legs dribble and then crosses over, that's going to force Alicia to run directly into Angel Reese. And in tandem with that, because it's not just on Chennedy, if Angel's able to take a better angle in terms of the angle and the point at which she's setting the screen at, all of those things can add up to the advantage on ball just being that much more monstrous and that much more of a fire for our defense to have to commit to and try to just deal with. And I think they can clean up those little things as they continue to build reps in their partnership and get to watch film and analyze everything together. Nonetheless, they're in a good space. Angel Reese is able to set up a nice little space screen here to do just enough to allow for Chennedy to turn the corner on Alicia Gray and get downhill. And now it's about her playing off of the advantages that, like I said from the onset, defenses present to her because of the abundant paint presence and driving presence that she is. You already see as she's coming off of the screen, Tina Charles is already loaded up at the nail waiting for her. So it's all about how Chennedy looks to counterpunch off of the defense being loaded up in the gaps the way that they are. So you see 2 feet well established in the paint from Tina Charles. Look at the patience from Chennedy Carter here, as she doesn't just drive directly into Tina Charles, but she also takes this extra dribble after going laterally right here to engage Tina Charles. Now, as we pause it here, we're going to take it back a little bit and watch also where Lindsay Allen's coming from. Things are getting a little crowded in that left corner of the screen here. So good job on this clear cut from Lindsay Allen. Remove some extra help out of there and allow for Chennedy to have some extra space, but also for them to play to the second side, where there's opportunity whenever Chennedy has the ball on the strong side. So the patience from Chennedy, engaging the help, taking this extra dribble to really keep their feet cemented, and then making this kick pass off of the drive to the opposite corner to Diamond DeShields, all possess the opportunity and advantage. Diamond's able to cash in, knocks that down, and it's all started from the onset by Chennedy Carter just being patient on ball, understanding the advantages she creates, how defense have to try to guard her, and just generally being able to counterpunch within that context of offense, with her drives and with her paint touches. That's good on good there in execution. And now we see Chennedy again initiating offense here. And this is an action we've talked about a lot this season. And that's the Sky needing to lean more into their two-guard actions, whether that be guard-to-guard screens, where the guard is either ghosting that screen, setting that screen, or slipping downhill off of that screen when teams look to switch, or getting into the guard-to-guard dribble handoffs, which have been extremely impactful for the team in terms of points per possession whenever they go to said two-player actions. They're finding pockets to use this, especially when Chennedy has the ball in fourth quarters. And I feel like it's effective for them. We see just that here. Nia Coffey's guarding Diamond DeShields. And we got Alicia Gray guarding Chennedy Carter on ball at the point of attack. So as we see Diamond DeShields flow into action, we see her ghost that screen on ball. And we see Chennedy momentarily holding a soft two to the ball in this action. So now we see Kennedy's decision making. First of all, it's the patience with the live dribble. And then secondly, is going to be her using this hesitation dribble, as we see at the mesh point, where she's waiting to see if the double team is going to materialize or if Nia Coffey is going to release back to the backside for defense. We see the latter happen here. No double team is fully established on the ball to try to get it out of her hands. We see a good job from the Chicago Sky respacing on that backside. And then we're also going to see a great job from Camila Cardoso on that strong side block, respacing and relocating. And watch how her relocation from the strong block to a weak block pulls Tina Charles from being 2 feet outside the paint to being 2 feet inside the paint. And watch the eventual floaty pocket to come for Chennedy Carter as she turns the corner and gets downhill on Alicia Gray. Without the respacing from Camila Cardoso and doing so at the timing at which she does, without that happening, Tina Charles is going to be able to more impactfully affect the release of Chennedy Carter on this floater. But because of Camila's timing at which she does so and just the general intent behind it, they're able to create just enough space. Kennedy's able to find this floaty pocket like I talked about, able to get up a soft touch floater off the glass, and that's cash. And I want to still frame it here just to look at the difficulty of shot here on the release. She's got two hands being contested, both from the side view from Alicia Gray, as well as from dead on from Tina Charles. Still able to find that mark off the glass, puts it right off the box, and it goes square in, doesn't even touch the rim. Great job in execution from Chennedy Carter. And now we've talked about her being able to make things happen in guard-to-guard actions off of handoffs or pick and roll play with guards or with posts. Also, the big thing with Chennedy Carter, with her drives and with her ability just to play in isolation, generally speaking, she's able to efficiently, on minimum dribbles, get past the primary defender without the need for a handoff or a screen. And I think there's a ton of value in that, because that allows for the Sky to get into actions like this, where they can clear both wings on the floor, get into 1-4 flat, where you have 4 players flat to the baseline, and she's isolated up top with all the space that she could possibly ask for, as well as the optionality in terms of direction of drive to come. All of that adds up, allows for her to be able to play with optionality, like I said, in space. And you're not going to contain Chennedy without a semblance of help within 2 dribbles of the space that the initial dribbles are taking place from. We see just that here, even for one of the most elite perimeter defenders in the W, in Alicia Gray. Kennedy's going to be able to use her sleight of hand, catches with a little bit of element of surprise to get downhill. And it's not just point A to point B with her drives, as I slow it down. It's the nuance within it. So I talked about in the opening play, she gets into the drive, assesses the help defense, is patient on ball, and is able to create an advantage playmaking off of that for others. Now she's doing it for herself in isolation. Gets past the initial defense, and just like think about a wide receiver in being pressed in football, you're not just going to get open trying to run to open space and hoping that you can kind of outrun most defenders, because on a professional level, elite defenders are going to find a way to get back into play. Apply that context in terms of wide receivers and press coverage to what I'm speaking to with Chennedy Carter. So she gets the drive, and this is the nuance within it. It's one thing to understand that you can beat somebody on leverage with your first step. It's a whole other thing when you understand spacing, understand angles within your drives, and that you're able to kind of ward off any type of back-end contest and rear-view contest to come from defenders. Not getting your shot blocked from behind after you're able to blow past an initial defender is extremely important, because the goal of your drive is to generate advantage in the paint touch, to either score for yourself or play make for others. Chennedy being able to do so here, as we see her get past Alicia Gray. Look at the veer back in terms of restacking. So not just being able to blow by, but able to veer back into that same lane that you know she's going to try to get a review contest into. And then the deceleration. And then the final thing, the cherry on top of it all, the extended arm finish on a finger roll completely eliminates the semblance of a contest from the rear view. She's also able to catch Tina Charles off guard and beat her with a little bit of element of surprise in terms of potential rim protection coming from in front of Chennedy. All of that is adding up to her being able to just be, like I said, the primary closer, primary fire starter in any scenarios. Her drives are at the plot of all of it, and she's able to finish at the cup again. One of the best scorers in the paint, guard or post, generally speaking, in the W this season. And then here, we're going to see on the defensive side, having the same sense of urgency to get a stop that she does to score the basketball. And again, that's extremely important, because if you're on the court in clutch time moments, it's not just about scoring. You have to be able to compile stops and compile just enough stops for the weight of your scoring to ultimately put you in positive in terms of the flow of the game late in games, when a game takes on a game in and of itself in fourth quarters. We see just that here with her, playing one-on-one, staying to the strong side hand from Alicia Gray, ultimately containing and then poking the ball away, and just generating that extra possession for the Chicago Sky. These little things really matter in process. And then the last thing here, coming back to the offensive side of the ball, looking at more small actions with Chennedy Carter. This time she's initiating again, rather than receiving a handoff or setting that screen. She's initiating, and I want to emphasize that. We're going to see her have Diamond DeShields come up from that strong hand corner. And we talked about last time, Diamond DeShields set a ghost screen, and it kind of played with the switching and the general coverage on ball that Alicia Gray and Nia Coffey were trying to get into. Now we're going to see Diamond DeShields actually set this screen, and you see the reaction that that's going to get out of the defense as Nia Coffey is completely out of position, anticipating Diamond potentially ghosting this. So now, because it's being set, in addition to Chennedy being able to steal the angle in terms of if she wasn't necessarily switching but just trying to hedge, winning on leverage like this for Chennedy, always going to be a win for the Chicago Sky. She's able to then turn the corner, and that's the unpredictability in the action when you have a guard screening. They can do either three of those things in terms of ghosting it, setting it, or slipping it and getting downhill, even popping off that screen sometimes, especially with the way Chennedy gets downhill. All of that unpredictability results in an advantage, gets a reaction on the ball that's advantageous for the Sky and for Chennedy, gets downhill, gets a paint touch, and this is where she's just extremely prolific. It's not just layups, it's not just play through contact, it's the ability to be efficient and effective and elite, operating in the mid-range off of multiple dribble pull-ups. Look at the veer back as she sees Tina Charles step up to take away in rim protection, the straight line drive, veers to that pocket just below the nail, and she's able to get up off of the left-hand dribble, a very comfortable midi pull-up on the fade, and she gets the friendly bounce. She's living right. The ball bounces right into the bucket off of that, and this is Chennedy and her ascension into the primary role of closer for the Chicago Sky. These little things really add up for her. The fact that she's able to take such urgency, apply that not just to scoring on offense and leadership with her energy, but also being able to galvanize troops with her defense and being able to do like we saw there, and just be able to generally turn the corner, get into the paint, and just score at a prolific pace the way she has this season. Extremely important for them. Looking forward to her in more scenarios when these games enter clutch moments and assessing how she operates in those scenarios. But at this point in time, she is that player for the Chicago Sky. And I feel like if we're speaking to this team long term, nobody else checks that box off better than she does.